I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. And today we're talking more about summer sewing, specifically the decisions that can make or break your warm weather projects. So we're going to walk through 5 key questions to ask yourself before you start your next summer project, so you end up with garments you'll actually want to wear when it's hot outside. All right, Haley, here's our icebreaker for today. Tell me about a summer garment you made that turned out to be a total win. So something that you reach for constantly, and what made it work so well.
I think that the one that comes to mind, which I need to recreate because I'm a different size than when I did this, was that one summer I think I still lived in LA at the time. I decided that I wanted to make my perfect t-shirt and have a whole bunch of different drafted variations of it, like different neckline variations, sleeves. I wanted a couple dress lengths to pick from. And so I self-drafted a t-shirt with all of all of the above. And it was so nice to have like a tried and true knit, like modular pattern that like anytime I had a knit fabric, I could choose one of those options and mix and match different details to get what I wanted. And I was thinking recently how much there was one particular dress. It was like a black knit bodycon dress that I had and wore for like at least 7 years. And I really want to recreate that dress, but also that whole system was iconic. And it wasn't like a lot of sewing time necessarily. It was just like the time doing all of the math and then like making a couple different tests.
Yeah.
But it was a big time saver in the long run.
That's really smart. I really like that idea. Give me some ideas about, I like the idea of making a t-shirt dress too. That seems like a good summer project.
It's such a good traveling piece. And that was one of the things I loved about it was like anytime I was going somewhere in the summer, it was like going in the bag.
Yeah. I have a knit like tank dress that's like that. It's just a black, very simple tank dress. You can throw a button-up shirt over it. You can throw whatever over it, sweater, whatever. It's so easy to pack and easy to wear.
Yeah, it's like that one thing that you like finish packing your bag and you're like, well, I might as well.
Yeah.
I might as well just put that in there too.
And then you end up wearing it half the time.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're traveling. Yeah.
What about you? What summer garment turned out to be a total win?
Well, I've had a few that I really like, but one that came to mind because I wore it recently. Many years ago, I made the Seamwork Carter dress, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a pretty simple kind of shift dress, and it has a square neckline, like a mitered square neckline. And I made it it's like this off-white linen, and it has these little threads of kind of like a rainbow color threads going through it. Very subtle. It's not really bright. It's very subtle. You kind of have to look for it. Really cute fabric. And I have had this dress for so long, and I still wear it pretty frequently, mostly in the summer and the spring, but I can also wear it with tights, and it's just really easy to throw on. And I love dresses like that. And I think I should probably make it again, now that I think about it, because I was thinking it would look really cute to make it in like an eyelet and use an eyelet trim for the mitered neckline. Yeah. So it's like lace instead of a lined mitered neckline. I think that would be really, really, really cute. But it just makes me realize that I really like things that I can throw on in summer, but then layer with tights and a cardigan or something like that in the fall and the winter.
Yeah. Since our warm weather season is like so brief here where we live, I always try and make sure that there's at least like one of my summer sewing dresses that have that kind of potential.
Yeah. That's why it's kind of nice to sew with black in the summer, or whatever dark color you prefer, if you don't like black, because I think black actually looks really nice in the summer. And feels really good, like a simple little black cotton dress, and then you can easily transition it to other times of year. All right. Well, let's get into our topic for today. Oh, and by the way, if you have an icebreaker for us, if you have a question, we can use this as an icebreaker for a future episode. You can leave it in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll answer it in a future episode. You can also leave a comment for us on Spotify. We read those as well. So wherever you're listening. All right, let's get into our issue for today. So I think summer sewing can kind of feel deceptively simple, like tank tops, sundresses, shorts, but there are actually a lot of decisions packed into these projects. And I think sometimes the stakes can feel a little bit higher, both because we talked about in the last episode that we often have less time for sewing in the summer. And I think for me, that makes the stakes feel a little bit higher. Sometimes you have trickier fabrics. I like to sew with eyelet a lot in the summer, for example, which it can be a little bit tricky to work with. You need comfort for the heat. Oftentimes you have more skin showing, so it's just a little bit different. So I think, sometimes if I don't plan out my projects for the summer, I end up making things that either don't work for the summer months or that I only wear during the summer and not for the rest of the year, like we were just talking about. So it's really just about planning things out so that you can make the right decisions around your sewing in the summer. And today we're going to be framing each of those decisions as a question that you can ask yourself. So, Haley, do you find summer sewing easier or harder than sewing for other seasons?
It's somehow both at once.
Yeah.
I find myself drawn to simpler projects. So like in a technical sense, I find the sewing to be easier, but I find it harder in that I love all the options and I want to make all the things. So the decision making is harder and it's harder to find the time.
Yeah.
So I think that those are like the two complement or, complicating elements. What about you?
I think for me, it's a little bit harder, only because it's just so different the rest of the year. I find that I really enjoy planning out my projects for fall and winter and spring as well. For summer, for some reason, planning those just seems a little bit more difficult, a little bit trickier for me. I think mainly just because I know I have less time to do it in.
So what would you say your summer sewing personality is? I know you really like to plan ahead in the spring. Do you find that heat is inspiring?
I think no, not really. I personally, I really like mild weather. So I find the heat is really difficult to plan for because when it comes to hot days, like I don't really want to think about what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not that inspiring. Like I just want to wear the easiest thing. And I have a limited number of things that fit that bill. So it's almost a little bit too constrained sometimes, but I think the more I do plan for it though, the better equipped I am to make things that I'll actually wear. What about you?
I like to delude myself into thinking that I'm going to sew something that is going to solve that problem for me. That's going to make it so that I'm not going to be hot and pissed off and irritated. So I think, and you know what? Sometimes I can do that. Sometimes like an airy cotton dress does truly improve my day and my mood.
Yeah.
I think I get excited for the sun. I really enjoy, I think coming from somewhere with such a hot climate, I'm from a desert climate. I lived in LA. I feel like I'm in my wheelhouse. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. Yeah, hold my purse. I know this. So I feel a lot more confident in my sewing. I just wish I had more time. It's just a tough time of year for that because I have so many hobbies that become much more active this time of year.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have a limited window for that. Whereas with sewing, I can sew in, all year round.
Yeah.
Have you ever made something that feels like really perfect for summer, but then didn't work in real life?
Well, last summer, I wouldn't say this didn't work in real life, but last summer I made our bucket hat pattern. What's the name of that pattern?
Ray?
The Ray. Yeah, the Ray bucket hat. Um, and it's really cute. I made it reversible in a Liberty Tana lawn in
Cute.
like a cherry red and then a solid cherry red with white top stitching on the other side. It's really cute. But I think I realized that I'm not really a bucket hat person.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it would be nice for gardening and going for walks and things like that, but I think maybe it's just not like I liked the idea of it more than the reality of it. So it just didn't work for me. Just I don't know, my style, I guess. It just didn't suit suit me for some reason. Um and I think that's just one of those things, like, sometimes you just have to try something new and see if it works, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, or maybe you'll come back around to it in the future and, find that you do like it in a future summer, but, I don't see those things as failures necessarily, they're more just, like, experiments, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I think for me, any time that I've made something that ends up being like a real miss for me in the summer is when it's too fussy. Something that I need a zipper to get in and out of, with the exception of like shorts. That's the exception there. But like, I just don't want, I want things that can like, I can step into, that I can pull on. It's on my body and I don't have to think about it for the rest of the day. And anytime I've missed that mark is when I've regretted the time I spent on something.
Yeah. And sometimes those things will work out for different times of year, like, you just don't wear it in summer.
Totally. I think they end up like being just fine in the spring, and it doesn't mean they're like a total failure, but it's does not suit the purpose that I had intended it for.
Yeah. One thing I'm thinking about doing for the summer is making things that will work for gardening, because I do spend a lot of time gardening in the summer. So I was thinking about doing like a gardening capsule wardrobe. That would be kind of fun. I don't know. I don't know if I'll go that route or not, but it's a fun idea. All right, well, let's get into those decisions that we talked about. So we mentioned that sewing is really just all about decisions and making those creative decisions along the way. So let's talk about 5 decisions that you can make around your summer sewing and just thinking about through these things that are really going to help you. So we're going to frame these as questions that you can ask yourself. And the first one is natural fibers or performance fabrics. So the first question to ask yourself is, do I want to use natural fibers or performance fabrics? And it's really not about one being better than the other. It's about what's right for you and what's right for this garment. So I'll talk about what these are. So natural fibers are things like linen, cotton, rayon. So things that are breathable, they have a beautiful drape. Sometimes they can wrinkle. So fabrics like linen, and to some extent cotton and rayon, they can wrinkle a bit. So that's something to consider. I personally love natural fibers, and it's something I sew with quite a bit in the summer. But you also have the option of using performance fabrics. So these can be things like, moisture wicking, often polyester blends. They can be very easy to care for, and they're really great for active lifestyle. So think about like a pair of leggings or something like that, like these kind of more athletic, sportier fabrics. These can also be really, really great for summer, depending on what your activities are. So some questions to ask yourself are, what will I be doing in this garment? How do I feel about wrinkles? Can I tolerate wrinkles? I'm sewing a dress right now in a rayon jacquard, and it it wrinkles like crazy. So we're gonna see how it works out over the long term, like once I actually finish it. But that's something that we really have to consider when we're talking about these more natural fiber fabrics versus the performance fabrics. And then think about whether it needs to pack well. Generally, these performance knits are going to pack very easily, and they're great for travel wardrobes and things like that. So, Haley, do you sew at all with performance fabrics in the summer or any other time of year?
Very rarely.
Mm.
I tend to, especially in the summertime, I tend to exclusively sew with natural fabrics. I think that really really in my real life, the only performance fabrics I really wear are for outerwear in the colder seasons and bras,
Yeah.
leggings for working out.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to not be the things I want to sew as much in the summertime. So natural fibers for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a natural fiber person generally, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think performance fabrics have their purpose. And like I mentioned, I do think they work really well for things like travel, and they're great for
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing active things. So, one thing that I do a lot of in the summer is hiking, and you don't want to wear cotton when you're hiking.
Yeah.
So, performance fabrics, if you're going to sew for specific activities like that in the summer, I think they can work really, really well. And it's definitely something to consider. Um, if I go with that gardening wardrobe that I talked about, they can work really, really well for that, just to keep both um, the sweat off your body, and also they can provide UV protection, things like that. So I think try to think about them in terms of their specific use case.
Yeah, definitely. The next decision you'll have to make is how much coverage you actually want. The right amount of coverage, and like what the right amount of coverage is for your lifestyle and for your personal comfort. So consider things like your sleeve length, necklines, hemlines, and all of this is like very intensely personal. Something that I like to consider as well is sun exposure, workplace needs, my personal comfort. That's like my, comfort physically as well as emotionally. And also air conditioning, because lots of places tend to be highly air conditioned this time of year. And I think that the difference between what looks good in photos and for what you actually reach for, they can be two different things, and that's worth considering. So thinking of like sleeveless versus cap sleeves versus short sleeves and how each one of those feels. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just personally what you prefer. Sari, do you think that your preference for summer coverage has changed over time?
I really think it has. I mean, growing up in Southern California, I preferred as little coverage as possible because it does get quite hot there. Um, and I think to some extent I still do, because it also gets very hot here. And people who don't live in the Pacific Northwest don't realize that, but we often have periods of intense heat in the summer. Um, but sun protection has become much more important to me as I've gotten older. So I do try to cover up as much as I can in the sun, including wearing hats and also wearing things that'll cover my shoulders. And specifically when I'm going to go back to that gardening capsule again, when I'm out gardening, I always wear a long sleeve button up shirt. And what I like about that is because it has a collar and a collar stand, it protects my neck, which can get a lot of sun, the back of my neck. And you can roll up the sleeves if you get too hot. It's usually pretty loose fitting. So I do definitely try to, it's like summer layers, I guess. I like to, have something that's cool and breezy, and then something I can put over it to keep the sun off of my skin. What about you?
Yeah, I think that like you growing up in Southern California, where I'm from in the Palm Springs area, it's like over 110 degrees, a lot of the year.
Mm-hmm.
There's that consideration, but also depending on where you live, I think that culturally there's more coverage or less coverage may be acceptable, and living where I do now, and also my life as a working person and as a mom, I can't always get away with wearing as little as I used to feel comfortable wearing. And I take sun protection so much more so much more seriously in my 30s than I did in my teens and my 20s. So for that reason, this time of year, I tend to favor things that have like I love a 3/4 length sleeve in the summer. I love like a long sleeve that I can layer over things. I find myself going for either like no sleeves or like a longer sleeve.
Yeah.
So that I kind of preserve layerability in the case of like where I'm wearing something sleeveless, nice to wear something with sleeves over top. And then hemlines, I feel like I still love a mini option.
Yeah.
But my life requires so much bending over now.
Yeah.
In a way that it did not before. And so I always regret when I wear something that's too short because it's, things will be a showing.
Yeah. That's why I like rompers, because they can be a little bit shorter, but you still have a little bit more coverage because they're shorts rather than a skirt.
Yeah. And when I do wear something short now, I just wear shorts underneath.
Yeah, I do too.
So if someone catches a peek, then there's not a whole lot to see.
Yeah. It protects you, and then it prevents chafing too, which is always an issue in the summer. All right. The next question to ask yourself is about ease. So how much ease do I want for hot weather to stay comfortable? So more ease can mean more airflow, but too much can actually kind of trap heat because you have so much fabric around you. So think about body skimming versus relaxed versus oversized fit, because each has its trade-offs. You might prefer one or the other generally on your body, which is a great place to start, but then think about how it's going to interact with the actual weather conditions. So some questions that you can ask yourself around this. Do you tend to run hot, or do you tend to run cold like me? I'm cold all the time. What's the fabric weight? That'll help to inform how much ease you actually want for your garment. And what is the garment for? What is the context in which you're going to be wearing it? So pay attention to what you reach for on the hottest days, and that'll help you to determine the amount of ease that you're going to feel the most comfortable with in those warm months. Do you size differently for summer garments, or do you look for different amounts of ease than you otherwise would in summer?
I think in woven garments, I tend to seek more ease in the summer. And then in knit garments, I tend to want more fitted things. Because I feel like when something's nice and fitted, you're like, I don't feel as much of my own skin, that skin on skin is kind of gives me the yuck. So I tend to go for more like fitted t-shirts or fitted tank tops to avoid that sensation.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah.
But physical feeling of skin on skin.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, like when I sleep, I'm like, I don't want to feel my own skin. It like creeps me out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Let alone like Eric. I'm like, get away from me. When it's time to go to sleep, don't touch me. What about you?
I tend to like things to be a little bit breezier in the summer. I don't like a lot of fabric around my waist specifically in the summer because I just feel like it gets sweaty around that area, and it just doesn't feel good.
No.
So I think that's one of the areas. Any rubbing like under my armpits, I hate that. So I do tend to go for things that are a little bit more loose fitting, but without being super loose. That's why for me, I like things that are more body skimming and drapey versus things that are like really loose and billowy. And that's what works for me. Although sometimes like a super billowy dress can be nice for specific purposes. Like I have a linen caftan style dress that is just super, super breezy. And that's great for going to the pool, things like that. But generally I like something that's kind of semi-loose fitting, semi-body skimming, and sort of drapey.
A caftan is my ultimate summer.
Yeah.
Summer staple.
It is very comfy.
I love just like a really cool, weird fabric caftan.
Yeah.
Just to like instantly make me feel like not like a summer slob.
Yeah.
I have a couple that are my go-tos.
The Mrs. Roper look.
Yes, it's essential. All right. Our next decision is what construction methods work for summer fabric. So, summer fabric have their own challenges like slippery rayon or sheer fabrics, linen that can be really unravelly, stretchy knits. And so some of the decisions you'll need to make are your seam finishes, like is this French seam more appropriate on things with sheer fabric, or maybe a Hong Kong finish on something like a linen pair of trousers could be lovely, or even nice and simple with a serged edge. What cutting approach are you going to take? Do you need to stabilize with starch? Do you need to cut single layer? Pattern weights, those types of things. And then lastly, what kinds of interfacing would you need to use? Most of the time lighter weight, and in some cases you may be able to skip entirely. I think it's important to think about the construction before you buy the fabric if you don't already own it. And this can help us to make decisions around what's most achievable for us to actually make in the summertime. And some of these details also may contribute to the wearability and the comfort of the garment, which is, as we've discussed, very key.
Yeah.
Sari, what summer fabrics have you learned to love, or do you avoid because of how it behaves?
Oh, that's a great question. So one summer fabric that I feel like I really, really love, but isn't that easy to come by or that popular, is a silk cotton blend voile.
Mm-hmm.
It can be kind of hard to find, um, but I just think it's so lovely. It has kind of this floaty, silky look to it, and because of the silk content, it takes color really well. So if you are looking for like a brightly colored summer dress or summer top, it's just beautiful. But at the same time, you get the ease of sewing with cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look too fussy. It doesn't look too like fancy like silk can.
Yeah.
So it's a fabric I really, really like. But it can be a little bit tricky to find. So it's not one that I've sewn with that often. But when I do find it in a color that I really like, it's just fantastic. So I feel like that's one that's kind of overlooked a lot of the time.
I see lots of silk cotton blends on Mood.
Mm.
They may not always be voile, but lighter weight ones.
Yeah.
So check there.
I will have to. It's just hard with buying online because you don't know what the weight or the texture is.
It's rough. It's rough out there. I feel like for me, I used to, I wouldn't say dislike cotton lawn, but it wasn't my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And now I probably sew like 80% of my summer stuff in cotton lawn.
Yeah.
I used to sew a lot more in rayon challis in the summertime, and I've been sewing with it less and less for summer just because I'm not a huge fan of how it feels when you get sweaty.
Mm.
And I think that it can be a little bit insulating in the same way that silk can be when it's really warm out. I find it to be better suited I like it a little more for spring.
That's interesting. For me, I feel like it breathes pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I don't know. Maybe it's the shapes I'm making too.
Yeah.
If making like a short dress, a short skirt, something like that. It's fine for that. All right. Let's go to decision 5. So this question is maybe the most important question. And it's really, is this project worth your summer sewing time? So is it the right project for right now? We talked about this a lot in the last episode, but summer is very busy and we tend to have less sewing time in the summer. So this is something that I really try to think about. Basically the projects I'm very excited about make the cut for summer. So some things to consider here are, will I wear this while it's still warm? And is it going to be a quick win or is it going to be a big undertaking? I personally tend to go for the quick wins in the summer and save those big undertakings maybe for the fall. Or if it's more of a warm weather project, maybe make it in the spring. And then think about the season it's suited for as well. Is it suited for summer or is it more suited for one of those shoulder seasons, the fall or spring season? So it's okay to have just have some ambitious projects queued up and saved for later and just take the summer to sew some simple things or to have a slower season. And if you're looking for inspiration around this or ways to slow down, definitely check out our last episode because we went over a bunch of tactics to help you kind of manage and slow down your summer sewing if that's difficult for you. So what do you think, Haley? Do you tend to do this a little bit differently in the summer and save those big projects?
Yeah, definitely. I think the big thing that I've noticed with summer is that I don't like sewing during the daytime as much. So I tend to not sew on the weekends because I'm just busy doing things.
Yeah.
So most of my sewing is happening at nighttime once my kids go to sleep, which means that I'm getting 1-2 hours in, like absolute max. And so selecting projects that are suited for sewing in those kinds of bursts. I mean, I think you can sew anything in small chunks of time. But I like to consider like my satisfaction with how far I'll get with each one of those chunks. And when I'm sewing something that's a little bit more simple, then I can make more progress in that amount of time. And it just feels more satisfying, which means that next week when I have another chunk of time, I'm much more likely to reach for it again.
Yeah. You mentioned that in the last episode too, and I think it's really interesting to think about because where we live, we are pretty far north, and in the summer it stays light very late until like almost 10 o'clock at night. And that means that I don't mind doing some of those activities a little bit later into the evening, some of those indoor activities like sewing, whereas in the rest of the year when it's dark, like I'm useless after dinner. Like I don't do anything.
Yeah. But now that the nights or the days are starting to elongate, it's a lot easier. And also my sewing space is on the west side of our home. So it gets really hot in the morning and during the day. But then by the time, 8 o'clock rolls around, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's the best place to be in the house.
All right. Well, let me recap the 5 questions that we talked about today. So these are 5 decision points for your sewing, questions you can ask yourself before you start a summer project. Number 1 is natural fibers or performance fabrics. What's going to work best for your project? Number 2, how much coverage do I want? It's not always about less coverage in the summer. Number 3 is what amount of ease will keep me comfortable. Number 4 is what construction methods work for this summer fabric. And number 5, is this project worth my summer sewing time? So those are the questions. I think they're all really, really helpful, either when you're thinking about a specific project or when you're even just planning out your summer sewing. And I think my big takeaway from this episode is really just what we just talked about kind of adjusting your schedule for the natural rhythms of summer. That's something I had, I thought about it a little bit, but I was just telling Ken last night, like, I really wish that I had more energy in the evenings because there's time in the evenings to do things, but I just never feel like doing it. But in the summer, when it gets light, when it stays light until, 9, 10 o'clock at night, I don't really mind it as much. So I think that's something that I'm gonna try to remember as I plan out for my next, few months of not just sewing, but just, my creative time. What about you?
I think that my takeaway is that as creative people, there's never like a lack of ideas. I always have a million ideas and less time than I would like to execute them. So having these questions to ask yourself, like the ones that we outlined today, can give you like so much can give you guardrails, little bumpers for your creativity. Because for me, creating something beautiful is like, it's gratifying in itself, but creating something beautiful that I actually get to use and actually get to wear is the ultimate. That's the goal. And having questions and criteria to help guide your decision making so that you can reach that goal is, I think us as creative people need that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think also today we just have so much input in our lives. Like it's overwhelming. And more and more, I just realized that, the key to having a peaceful life is just throttling all that input and making sure that only the best of the best gets in.
Yep.
And I think that having some, like you're saying, some kind of criteria, something that'll help you to do that, any tools that help you to tone down the amount of input that's coming in, that's something that's going to be useful. And I think especially, like you said, especially as creative people, it's really hard to say no to inspiration, but not all inspiration is worth your time because you have limited time on this earth. So you kind of have to have some kind of filtering criteria. All right. Well, if you're thinking about sewing with linen this season in particular, because we talked about linen a little bit, we actually have a free linen fabric cheat sheet that can help you. And it covers what to look for when shopping for linen. It covers our top sewing tips for it, and it even gives you some pattern suggestions for that. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. You can go over to seamwork.com and you can download it for free, but we'll put a link to that right in the show notes for you. And if you liked this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or you can leave us a comment on Spotify, and we read those as well. You can also follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. We are always producing new videos over there. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. And that's it for us this week. I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.